Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bro Doc Talk. I'm Henry Lewis III. I'm a residency program coordinator and former pre-health advisor. Happy Black History Month. We have an excellent episode for you all today honoring Black History Month. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Young.
Yes, happy Black History Month, everyone. I'm Dr. Omar Young. I'm a maternal fetal medicine specialist at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Today's episode is entitled, She Looks Like Me. And we thought for Black History Month, we should not only pay honor to that, but also to pay honor to a group that is very important to the culture, so Black women. Today on our episode, we have one of my really good friends and an excellent physician in her own right, Dr. Ashleigh Allen, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, I am Dr. Ashleigh Allen. I'm a pathologist at Cooper University Hospital in Southern New Jersey, and I've known Omar for years. So thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Allen. To start with, tell us a little bit about your story and also why pathology?
Sure. I actually chose medicine in general and pathology specifically relatively early on. I chose, I decided to go to medicine probably when I was in high school. And from that point, just kind of got obsessed with the idea of being a doctor. And then I was introduced to pathology in college. I went to a state school here in New Jersey called Rutgers, and I had a pre-med advisor who sort of he was a biology professor and a biologist, and he sort of turned me on to different aspects of medicine. I sort of introduced me to pathology, and I was kind of hooked. And the minute I got to medical school and sort of saw my first histology slide, I was kind of addicted. And pathology is one of those specialties. It's sort of very niche. Everybody else is sort of bored by it. Mm-hmm. So I knew the minute I liked it, I was like, okay, this really is for me. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure a lot of people can say that.
Awesome.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I thought you
something. So it sounds like that you knew that, early on that you wanted to be in medicine. Did you have any other ideas of what you wanted to do with your career?
I did, actually. I majored in chemistry and math in college, and the idea of being a chemist or a chemistry professor was always kind of in the back of my mind. And every time I thought about it, I just kept coming back to medicine. And even as I was applying for medical school, I thought, well, it's sort of an arduous process. So it's like, well, do I really want to go through this, or am I sure this is something I want to do? Because once you're in, you're in, right? But I every time I sort of turned my head and looked, I was like, well, chemistry is kind of right there. It's like I'm really good at it. I really like it. But it came down to sort of getting past what I called the fun stuff, the other stuff I did in college that wasn't leading me towards a career, and really thinking about the rest of my life. And medicine was just kind of it for the realistic side of me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you say something that's really important and that people listening to this broadcast should know is that medicine itself is, they say medicine is a calling, and to a certain extent that's true. Mm-hmm. Based on, all the exams we have to take, all the certifications that we have to go through, all the licensure that we have to do, and all the maintenance of certification and everything that's involved in training, be it a residency, a fellowship, or some people do multiple fellowships. There has to be, at the end of the day, a passion for whichever field of medicine that you choose. Mm-hmm. And as I tell undergrads or high school students, if you really wake up at the beginning of a day and medicine is the only thing that you think about wanting to do, then that's great. Then you can absolutely pursue medicine as your career. But if you're ever having any shred of doubt in your mind about should I pursue a career in medicine, I think, it's totally fine to follow your own passions wherever those are. But it's important to know that those people that are in medicine, there's going to be the best doctors, are the ones that are most dedicated to the field.
Exactly. I completely agree with that. I was actually having this conversation with a relative the other day. I was asked, would I do it again? And I said, well, would I want to go through medical school again? No, but I don't necessarily want to go through high school again either. At the same time, I can't see myself doing anything else. I've never met a doctor who could see themselves doing anything else with their lives, regardless of how hard it is. At the end of the day, you get through it and then you end up doing something you love.
What challenges did you face, entering medical school or residency?
Starting with the basic academic challenges, medical school is very different from college. I double majored, so I was used to sort of a rigorous curriculum, and then you kind of get dropped into medical school and there's no help. And then going to residency, it was different because I was in this specialty, pathology, that I love. But for me, and I think this is really important, is I was the only one of me. I was in what is considered for pathology a huge program. It was 23 people across 4 years, in addition to fellows and attendings and visiting attendings, visiting residents. There were 2 Black residents, 2 Black people in that entire department, and of the 2 Black people, I was the only Black female. Everybody else was a not underrepresented minority for medicine, so white or Asian American, and it was strange to me. I mean, I didn't face any. I want to say I didn't face any overt racism, but I'm walking that back a little bit because there were incidents that I was later told by other people were due to how I look and who I am. So I want to say, like, that was an obvious struggle for me coming up, especially in both medical school and residency. I think it was just more, it was more low key in residency. It wasn't as obvious. Omar and I went to the same medical school, so I think we shared some of the same experiences there. That he's probably talked about on this show before, but
I would say, lots of the racism that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we've all encountered is not necessarily explicit.
Yes,
there is a huge component to implicit racism, be that, microaggressions, be that just a lack of knowledge, and I will say the word ignorance on the part of those that perpetrate it. It's very rare that we have any execution of overt racism just based on the culture in which we're in. But I think that you bring up a good point in that you say that you were the only one, and we've heard that so many times. So knowing what you know now, would you have changed your training program?
No.
Okay.
I don't think the experience would have been different or better or more diverse anywhere. But I do think I got the best training. You kind of, I'll step back for a second. You kind of go into it thinking, well, what's going to make me the best at what I do? What's going to make me the best pathologist? And so the diversity of the program didn't really enter into my mind. And I guess that's kind of part and parcel for the culture, is that no one really says to you, oh, well, you should look at how they treat Black people in the program. Like, make sure the program is going to be nice to you because you're probably going to be the only Black woman. So no one ever said that to me. And that doesn't, like, my brain doesn't work that way. So it never really occurred to me to question that. And then I got into the program, and it wasn't until I was there that I realized, oh, I really am the only one. I started looking around, and but even looking back on it, I think I still had a great experience, and I was still lucky to get very good training.
Dr. Allen, why do we need more Black physicians in pathology? Why is that important?
I think part of it is one of the things is what I just said is there was no one who looked like me who could guide me through the experience I personally was going through. When there were situations that did kind of, would kind of rub me the wrong way or were kind of, rooted in bias, there was no one around me who could like point that out and warn me. I don't want to say warn, I don't have a problem working with non-minority colleagues, but they don't live our experience. So there's no mentorship for me in that regard. I could tell a specific story. I had a sort of a clash with an attending my first year as a resident, and I could not for the life of me figure out why this attending sort of nitpicked everything I did. It wasn't that she hated me. That never occurred to me. It was that everything I did seemed unsatisfactory to a degree that she would nitpick it and correct me kind of aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to learn, so that didn't really bother me. But when I would be rotating on the same rotation with other attendings, I wouldn't get the same feedback. And I was wondering, well, she has a different style. Maybe she just doesn't like the way I do things and they don't mind, or they're more used to it, more people because they were more experienced. And then someone else told me, actually a white colleague told me, she hates you. I go, what? No, she legitimately hates you. And it's because she doesn't like Black people. And I go, that's not, hold on.
He said
What?
that?
He said, someone told me that about her,
Right.
that she hated me because I was Black. And that did not occur to me. And I'm thinking, and I think that caused me to think back on interactions like, no, she really did seem to dislike me personally. Maybe he's just exaggerating. And he finally told me that she had said things to him that indicated that she did not like brown-skinned and Black people.
Mm.
I'm going to
And
pause.
I was finally just like, well, that would have been nice to know.
Well, that's shocking.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my program director hat on for a second. Did you, as a trainee, have the agency to go to your program director and talk about these issues?
That's another thing, that type of issue, I didn't feel like I could. My program director was great, very nice person. I felt like that was a type of stirring the pot I didn't want to do. And there's always and you guys can maybe you can relate. There's always in the back of my mind, am I exaggerating this? I was told this, and now am I buying it because I'm just a hypersensitive Black person? And more to the point, do I not want to, I guess, create this type of drama being the only Black female in the program? And the other Black person in the department, the one other person that worked there, wasn't a resident anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the only Black resident, and it's like, do I want to be that person?
So what you're telling me, and this is like a classic example of something that I call a minority tax of training, in
Yes.
which not only is a trainee feeling disempowered to say something when things are not as the way that they should be, but also then add on top of that the trainee being a person of color in a predominantly white program, institution, what have you. And so I think this is a clear example in which, for those of you looking at programs, because the match is only about a couple of weeks away, highlighting programs that are going to not only foster your academic pursuits, but foster you as a person. So from my perspective, Ashleigh was saying, I was the only Black male in my program. And so I had similar issues with my attendings. And, at the end of the day, it gets extremely exhausting. And to the point that you're like, so, like you said, am I crazy? Is something going on? But that's like just the gaslighting that happens implicitly that we do to ourselves, but also people do externally so that for all intents and purposes, we don't say anything. Mm-hmm. But I think having conversations like these and getting it out in the open will empower those coming up in residency, medical school, fellowship, whatever, to actually, again, I'm going to use that word, to actually have agency in their own education.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I look back on it, I regret that I felt that way. I don't know specifically what I thought would have happened if I had just said, hey, that attending is being super racist. Could you say something about it? Mm-hmm. I don't know what I thought would happen if I did that, but there's always this paranoia of you're the only one, don't stir the pot. Mm-hmm. And I that comes from, I think, society as a whole, and especially in medicine when you're isolated and you're alone, there's no one to tell you, there's no one who's felt that way around you to tell you, no, that's wrong.
Right. And I think times have changed, because I feel like really in various different industries, you weren't encouraged to, bring up those types of issues as it relates to your feelings the way that we're encouraged to do that kind of stuff now. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I want you to kind of think in the past for a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the match process into pathology for you. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it.
Okay. So the match in pathology it's a little different in that pathology is not as popular or as competitive as most specialties. So, you go into most specialties, the first thing you do for every specialty before you apply for residency is you meet with your dean. Your dean looks at what you're going into, looks at your scores and says, hey, apply to a bunch of programs. This is super competitive. The dean took one look at she's going into pathology and just said, you'll match. I thought, what? And as I was interviewing, I basically started off going to every interview I was invited to. And by the 7th or 8th interview, people, I was interviewing with, other applicants were telling me, well, how many places have you interviewed at? And I said, oh, this is like my 8th. I think I have 3 more coming up. And people just went, really?
Like, where's the rest of them?
Girl, that's like 5 too many. Calm down. I'm like, I'm just trying to match. And they go, you're fine. Like, don't apply to that many places. And I found out later that everybody I ended up doing residency with, people that were in my residency class, yeah, they had interviewed at like 3 places, 4 or 5 places. But it's not that competitive, and some places don't fill. So there's occasionally unmatched spots at the end of the day in some places. I ended up at a relatively competitive program. So it wasn't an issue so much there, but just overall across the country, if you want to find a position somewhere, you most likely will. So the interview process, it's pretty busy interview days, because pathology is broken down into anatomic and clinical pathology. So it's biopsies, and then the biopsy side, and then the lab side with the core lab and everything, and blood banking. And so places sort of end up splitting those 2 things, and you usually apply for both. So you end up interviewing with one group of doctors over here and then another group of doctors over here, and they both have different mindsets, because anatomic and clinical pathology are sort of pretty far apart. And then you end up, so to do both, they sort of look for different things in applicants. It's kind of like applying for 2 residency programs at the same time. At the same time, though, I ended up having way too busy interview days. I think you end up going, for every place I interviewed at, you end up interviewing with almost every physician in the department. I mean, I must have interviewed at most places with like 7 or 8 different people, just jumping office to office and then touring the core lab and all of the resident facilities, et cetera. So it's, a good 8-9 hour interview process.
And of course, this was back in the dark ages before COVID existed.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah. He was saying this was back in the dark ages before COVID existed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, awesome.
All those in-person interviews. Who
Right,
knows what I picked up?
right.
But I mean, like, having done all those interviews, that's a lot of money, you know.
Yes. I was fortunate in that I was in a city with multiple programs, so I just applied. So a lot of those were every program in that city.
Mhm.
So a lot of subway rides across New York City, and then a lot of the rest of it, I had particularly limited myself to one geographic area. Most people don't do that, but since I happen to be in the Northeast, there's about 50 programs a drive from where I lived at the time. So all of my applications were within driving distance, and it was a lot of calling my parents to give me a ride.
Right. Versus all the flights and hotels
Yeah,
and stuff, other applicants had to do.
yeah,
Yeah. So I know a lot of people appreciate now the fully virtual, environment that we live in with these interviews. So you too, Dr. Young.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, knowing that you're like an attending now and you're successful, can you think of, anyone like a mentor wise that has contributed to your success?
actually, no, not really. I mean, I could say a bunch of people contributed to my success individually as training and sort of got teaching me everything I know about pathology. I think I had some of the best pathologists in the world teaching me. Um, but as far as a mentor, I consider that a very like a sort of more intimate personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I actually had anyone I could name specifically as a mentor.
That's interesting. Why is that?
I think about it, and I think it harkens back to there was no one around me who really lived my experience. There was no one around me who could actually guide me beyond the academic. I feel like with a mentor, they should be able to guide you through more than that, and because anybody can really guide you through the academics. And working with great pathologists, I think they did. I think they did very thoroughly help me become the pathologist I am. But as far as a mentor, I don't think there was anybody who really qualified for that. And I think it does harken back to there weren't any black people, there weren't many females. And I think that that is an important to note limitation when you think about one-on-one mentoring in medicine.
Mm. Do you think if you were, well, let me back up. Do you think your race or your sex has had a bigger impact on your career?
I do think it's had some impact. I definitely think it affects the way I've interacted with people.
Your race
Pathology.
or both?
I'm sorry.
Your race or sex or both?
Both.
Oh, okay.
Possibly more so my race now that more women are getting into medicine. Medicine's becoming, some places are like 55% women now in their med student classes. So I think possibly my race a little bit more than my sex, but I think being specifically a Black woman and not just a woman has impacted my practice. Pathologists are colloquially known as the doctor's doctor. We communicate with physicians all day, that instead of patients, that's our job. And so interacting with physicians, I feel like it's a whole other animal. You're talking to people that know as much, if not more than you on a 24/7 basis, and explaining things from this niche field that they have to now understand. So you're basically just teaching doctors all day.
Yeah.
And so my interactions are basically on this, I don't want to say level playing field, but when you're talking with a patient, it's very different, right? you're talking with someone that's entrusting you with their care, where the doctor doesn't have to trust anything you say. If you say something to another physician, they can easily just go to PubMed and look it up. So they don't necessarily have to trust anything you say, and that can and of course, when you get intelligent, well-educated people in a room, that can lead to personality clashing, and certain specific interactions have made me wonder: am I being targeted by this person or that other person because of what I look like? I think that incident in residency kind of flipped on that switch for me of, oh, this is something I have to look out for, because I wasn't looking for it before, and look what happened. So I think that has actually affected me in my day-to-day. It doesn't always come up, but it's always something that's in the back of your mind. It's unavoidable.
So how do you turn that voice off? How do you go about your responsibilities in pathology without having that be such a heavy burden on you day after day?
I think for me personally, it's the reminder that I do things by the book. I love being a pathologist. I love my job. I love the people I work with, and I'm very good at it. I'm not to brag, but I'm as good at this job as I possibly can be. So there's no reason for people to nitpick at me or to dislike something I've done. If there's a problem, I can turn on my professionalism and fix it, and it doesn't have to be a conflict. And reminding myself that it kind of becomes rote. It kind of becomes habit, where you just do that, and if someone conflicts with you, you just turn on the professionalism and, what do we have to do to get this fixed? What do we have to do to get it done? I think just remembering that I'm as good at this as I possibly can be is super helpful. I think no one's going to tear me down and tell me I'm a bad pathologist, because it's just not true.
So I think that's great. So I have lots of trainees that come to me, and they're stuck in their own heads. And I know, like, for me, I'm an MFM, so I do medicine, surgery, patients, everything like that. And when I'm trying to teach a resident a procedure, or they don't get it the first couple of times, or if a resident doesn't understand how we manage certain conditions, but I know that they're capable of doing it, they can get inside their heads, and they essentially like sabotage their own selves. And I see this a lot, particularly with trainees of color, in which they have this concept that, I'm not good enough, or I can't possibly go after this leadership position, or, I shouldn't apply to this program because I won't get in or seek this opportunity. So I think it's having that mentorship that, unfortunately, that you didn't have, that will be able to kick out that imposter who's trying to undermine you.
Yes. I think that's an excellent point. I think we get this sort of idea in our heads, and I think it's because it's pervasive in society, unfortunately, that, we were overachievers in college, sure, but we just got into this great medical school or this great residency program because we're Black, because we were the affirmative action hire. I think unfortunately, people do throw that at us of, you're only here because you were the special hire, you were the diversity hire. And I can't speak to residency specifically, but I was on a medical school admissions committee for quite some time. And when we did look at underrepresented minority students, we weren't admitting them because they were underrepresented. We were admitting them because they were excellent, and bonus, they're also underrepresented. They are more qualified than every other applicant we've looked at, and they also happen to be a Black student or a Hispanic student. So, I think that, having served on that side of on the admissions process, and finally seeing the process from the inside and seeing, no, like these aren't affirmative action students. These are excellent students that any school across the country would be very lucky to have.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we get lucky and they choose to come here. And if you think about it in that mindset, think back to like the stuff you accomplished in college. Before you were at medical school, before you were a resident, you were this hyper achiever in college, making the dean's list every semester, majoring in some obscure subset of molecular biology at whatever college. And then, and then you got into medical school above the 16,000 other applicants that applied the same year as you.
Right.
So I think, you have to remember that like you are where you are and you've gotten this far on your own. So, that, it helps to kick out that imposter. I think about that, thinking back on my own experience, like I got through double majoring at a great college and then getting through an Ivy League medical school. I didn't do it in spite of being Black. So, just reminding yourself and using that logical side of your brain that got you through all those science classes anyway, I think is a big help. Because doctors suffer from imposter syndrome anyway. I think it's just 10 times worse when you're a minority.
Right.
My light keeps going off.
What about peer support? Because sometimes I feel like we discount the impact of peer support. I think back to some of my academic programs or just experiences in life professionally. And a lot of times I got through things because of the people I was going through, with it. So did you have any peers? Like, I know you didn't have the mentors, but any peers that really held you accountable and really supported you in that process as well?
I think I did have peers. I mean, actually, Omar was probably one of my biggest peer supports in medical school. Through medical school and residency, he was always a phone call away. I think it's one of the reasons we're such great friends now. And just friends that were very close to me. Like I said, Omar's probably top of that list. That just like could help me through it. And family support is also very important. I don't have any doctors in my family, so they couldn't, empathize with me specifically on what I was going through on the medical side. But on every other side of it, there are some experiences within my family where they really could sort of hold me together.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. I love that.
So, sorry. So,
Dr. Young.
knowing no, it's fine. So knowing what you have accomplished, what you've gone through, let's say there's a young Black woman in front of you and she's interested in medicine. What are you going to tell her?
Do it. Absolutely do it. If you can see yourself, especially as a Black woman, if you can see yourself being a doctor for the rest of your life, for your career, do it, because we need more representation. We need more Black female doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And we've discussed is maybe a little intimidating, but some of this stuff, it's kind of just life, especially as a minority in the United States. They say the more things change, the more they stay the same, is unfortunately true. With that being said, part of fixing the system can come from within. Those biases that we see, that med students face, that residents face, that patients face, it's not going to get fixed unless we're a part of it, unless there's more of us to help fix it. So if this is something that you as a Black woman can see yourself doing, please, we need you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Also, what qualities or characteristics do you need to have to be a great pathologist?
You gotta be a big nerd. I like to joke that me and my colleagues are all just giant nerds. That you have to have an eye for detail. For anatomic pathology especially, it is mostly looking at slides and looking for details in patient charts. And we're not most of us aren't specialized to one organ system. So what you know for liver, you also got to know for brain and skin and ovaries. And so it's a lot of knowledge to take in. So that love of learning that fosters most physicians to choose to get a degree in medicine anyway, it's sort of like amplified a little bit in this very specific area. And so I would say, yeah, definitely an attention to detail, a love of learning, and not missing patient interaction all that much, because I haven't done much of that since I was since I was a resident and medical school. So if you find yourself you find that you're going to miss interacting with patients on a daily basis, maybe not pathology.
But I will say we need our pathologists, as they help us in the provision of diagnoses and determining how we would treat patients. So they're essential.
Very awesome. Any final words, Dr. Allen and Dr. Young?
I'll let Dr. Allen go first.
Okay. I just like to reiterate, please, young African Americans, especially the women and the guys, just please, if you're considering medicine, just give it some serious thought, because we are very underrepresented in this specialty, in this field, and we need more.
That's right.
I would second everything that she just said. But I would also say, if you want to see change, you need to be the change agent. And so, getting in the door, if you think medicine is the way to affect change from like a health equity perspective, from affecting changes in access to care, from changing the way that the complement of physicians is, in which that will have a subsequent impact on the provision of care, I think is super important. And so being mindful that you as an African-American man, woman, what have you, is going to have a significant and substantive impact far beyond your own career. And so it is a precious thing to be a part of medicine as a person of color. And I would say, as Ashleigh would probably agree with me, that it is a privilege to do what we do on a daily basis. And it is also a privilege to mentor those coming up after us.
That's right. There you have it from the physicians themselves. Thank you all for tuning in, and stay tuned for another episode of Bro Doc Talk.
And for those applying in the match, good luck, and we'll see you very soon.